Hello, welcome to Observations. My name is John Walsh, your host. I'm publisher of the Palm Coast and Ormond Beach community newspapers. Today is a very special show, very special guest here to talk about early learning throughout our communities. Our guests today are JBirney with JB Financial, volunteer with this organization.
Hold on, you got to say JBirney Financial.
JBirney Financial, thank you, no problem. Real special guest, my wife, Nancy Walsh, with the Early Learning Coalition, Yay. And Allison Miller, also with the Early Learning Coalition of Flagler and Volusia. So welcome, everybody. Thanks. And I guess the place to start is, what's the most on everybody's mind today is COVID and the effects that it has had throughout our community. And we want to talk about how COVID has affected your industry with early learning, and then how that also ripples out to other parts of our economy. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Well, so COVID definitely has had an impact on early learning. Providers have seen drastically reduced enrollments, which means kids are home with their families, which in some cases can be great, but in other cases isn't great because they don't have access to those high-quality experiences they might have been getting at the child care provider.
Let me ask you to back up a little bit. Let's talk about early learning, and what does that mean? Who's covered in that?
So early learning is children birth to 5 years old, and that's our, people may refer to that as daycare. We like to refer to it as child care, and I like to refer to it as early learning because that's what's really happening in these programs is children are getting their first experiences that are helping them develop and progress and be ready to start school. So really, really important experiences that are happening. And I'm going to toss to JB because I know he loves to talk about early brain development.
Right.
So a little introduction
She
first.
knew I was going to do that, right?
And how did you get involved?
Well, I've been involved in kids' causes for a long time. Actually, oddly enough, it started with a friend of mine had lost a child, and I helped him out with the Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Foundation back in Florida a long time ago. But Nancy's right. The brain of children develops 90% in the first 5 years of life. So the idea that early learning is important and quality early learning is super important is important to folks like us. These guys work in the business. I'm, of course, just a local business person, but I do serve as the interim chair of the Early Learning Coalition of Flagler and Volusia. And I think COVID has affected us as a board just because we haven't been able to meet in person. For so long, dealing with the early learning issues in Flagler and Volusia County, we've been unable to meet. So it makes it a little bit more challenging right there, along with the fact that, kids aren't really getting that full court press.
That's not common to your industry, obviously. Our office, once populated, virtually empty all day, every day. This virtual workplace has certainly changed most of our careers. Allison, how long have you been with early learning?
Since 2010. It's just been over 10 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great. And what's your primary function with the organization?
So I'm the director of community partnerships, and my primary function, we in my department take care of the marketing, the fundraising, any of the grant writing, and then also we help with the data piece. So data analysis. I don't do the analyzing, but I manage the staff that do, and they give us lots of good numbers and things to look at to help guide our work. So it's really interesting.
Oh, that's great. And I know the answer, but I like to tell the story that Nancy followed our children into preschool. They were able to leave it. She stayed there forever.
For one place or the other. That's right. And, early learning is just, it's an exciting field to be in. It's changing all the time. We're learning more all the time. We were having conversation before we got together here that it's just amazing what's happening now. We have lobbyists, we have bills getting passed that are having positive effects on the opportunities kids are getting to have the best possible early learning experiences. So it's been an exciting ride and continues to be.
And you're also included in the pillars at the state chamber level.
That's right.
It's also part of our priorities here in our new chamber, here at the Palm Coast Flagler Regional Chamber. So what we've identified is that it's good to have all of our children at reading grade level. First measure, I think, is at third grade. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's the first meaningful measurement. And so, it's really, really important for kids to read by third grade. If you're not reading by third grade, then you cannot read to learn. And then that becomes really a challenge for you as you move through the K-12 system. So what we are trying to do in 0 to 5 is set children up for success with learning to read. So while we don't expect 3-year-olds to read, we expect them to be ready to learn to read by the time they get to kindergarten. So it's really important for babies to handle books, for toddlers to be asking for someone to read them a book, for a 4-year-old to sit down and choose to look at a book on their own and understand that the pages turn left to right and the print goes left to right, and this is a word and this is a picture and this is a number. So all of those pre-reading skills are what we're really focused on in early learning programs. And those things can happen at home too, and they need to happen at home in order to have the best possible outcomes.
So back to the subject, COVID. It's been a year now that the world is living under this COVID pandemic. So service providers, your schools, your shut down, sent kids home. What happened?
Sometimes we had many providers, and if any of them are listening, thank you for what you do. Many of our providers stayed open the entire time, serving families, serving the children of first responders and of healthcare workers so that they could get to work and take care of our communities. And so we really applaud them, and many of them did that. Many of them did need to close at certain times because they were having outbreaks themselves. And I would say at this point, we're close to everybody back open with some intermittent closures here or there. So,
and enrollment about where it was a year ago?
Right, that's the challenge. Enrollment is way down for them. So where we were seeing full classrooms, now we're seeing classrooms at maybe half, 3/4 capacity. Although I do believe it's coming up now as things get better with respect to COVID.
There was a survey that you and I talked about a couple of weeks ago about how women that were surveyed that were in the workforce, that 49% are considering not going back to full-time position. Is that?
Yeah. If you have several children that aren't able to go to school, that's a challenge, right? And so somebody's got to be caring for those kids. So oftentimes we are seeing that women are leaving the workforce because it's just too hard.
And so early in the COVID day, when everybody was sent home, how did it happen that I remember, talking about being able to serve the first responders, make sure that their kids were in with a provider so that they could function and do their job. Mm-hmm. And it's just been a chain reaction from that point on.
Yeah, so we were actually, the state of Florida decided that it was important to get those kids into care. So we had some special categories of funding that we could offer to those families and to the providers who were giving the service, where we were able to get those children in to fill some of those empty spaces, which was great. It was great for the families receiving the care and great for those providers to be able to have that revenue coming in. So it's been a wild ride. We've done some creative things as a state and as a community, and we made it, right? So here we are saying what happened and what do we need to do now to make sure that we've got kiddos in the best possible place and ready to learn. How do we make up for some time that may have been lost this past year?
I was on a call this morning with all of the executive directors and CEOs, along with the chairman of the Early Learning Coalitions all over Florida. And a lot of the board chairs were really applauding the unbelievable job. And I felt the same way about our staff here. They went above and beyond really to help those providers and to make sure kids were getting the best we could because it was such a challenge. And Early Learning Coalitions really started as a economic development tool or as a workforce tool. People don't realize that. We fall under the Office of Early Learning and the Department or the Education now, but it wasn't that way. It was so people could work, So it's funny that
really
we go, absolutely. We go through a pandemic like this. And who did we need? We needed people working. We needed those essential workers working. Well, if they had small kids at home, and I think I don't mean to be, but so much was put on moms here. I know there are stay-at-home dads as well, but moms had really just an unbelievable burden, especially working moms, with what they had to do with school and just the total change. We all had it hard. You're right, John. All businesses did. But
every employer felt that pinch that in order for this worker to perform that duty, the first thing that had to happen was make sure the kiddos were set.
Well, and that's exactly right. And you mentioned the Florida Chamber's plan. The 2030 plan is what you were alluding to before about kids being ready to learn. And as far as the Florida 2030 plan, where they want 100% school readiness, it's the first pillar of their plan. We fall right in the first pillar, the first priority. And right now, the state of Florida is 53% of the kids are school ready. So we've got to get to 100% by 2030. I said, we better become an important issue. People better start looking at 0 to 5-year-olds because it's key of that first pillar. I guess, I don't know how, build like a 3-legged stool. If you don't have a pillar, I think things fall down,
Yeah,
you know?
It's going to go one way or the other. Allison, I'm sure that COVID has changed the fundraising world.
Yeah, it definitely has made things different. Our signature event is our rubber duck race.
Sure.
Which is every spring. Last year we were like, well, COVID had just kind of started a couple months before the event was scheduled in April, and we were like, okay, well, we're going to move it to September. So we moved it to September, and then we got closer to September and we went, whoa, this is not going away. We're not going to have this event in September. So we just kind of regrouped with our fundraising committee and we decided to go virtual. We usually have a raffle at the event, and we said, well, let's try an online silent auction. We've never done that before. And we just kind of shifted. We shifted and made the event a live event. I had some people that said, well, can't we just draw a number? And I was like, no, we can't do that. We got to have a real race. We told people we're having a race. We're going to have a race, So we went to Daytona Lagoon and we raced the ducks, with just the skeleton crew. And we did it on Facebook Live, and it was really well received. And we actually, even with our sponsorships being down and everything, we almost raised, we were less than $100 off from what we had raised the year prior.
That's great news. Great job.
Yeah. So we've learned we've definitely learned to pivot. Definitely learned to pivot.
John, I've been going to the duck race for years. Come on. Well, great. I think at this point, let's take a break, and we'll come back and drill down a little bit about some of the challenges that we're facing going forward in this pandemic.
Observations is a collection of podcasts and videos of conversations with neighbors, community partners, elected officials, and friends about local issues that are taking place in many communities.
Welcome back. So I want to pick up on something that you just said, John, that the state of Florida is at a 53% rating when it comes to school readiness. What does it mean, and what are the biggest challenges that you face?
Well, and I think Nancy hit on it before. You hear people talking now about third grade reading scores, which seems to be something they focus in on. And again, it's because when somebody changes from learning to read to reading to learn. So if we really want people to excel, we have to make sure they have those skills. If the brain's developing 90% in the first 5 years of life, people need to know that. And I think one of the things is that they really haven't known it. But again, going back to this being an economic development tool, which I look at it that way, I look at it helping many ways, many of our social ills, but especially for working parents, it costs a lot for childcare, and we want it to be the best quality. So the idea of getting the word out, and Nancy and I were talking, it's happening. We're seeing it. We've been involved long enough where, and these guys will remember, Allison will remember when I talked about we always have to start at square one. That was my old thing, was why do I always say Early Learning Coalition and then I have to start at square one on what our mission is? Well, nowadays, I don't have to start at square one sometimes. Even the Florida Chamber is realizing that this is really important. What I've been shocked at is when you see a number, and you can look on the Florida scorecard at every different county's kids and how ready.
The Florida State Chamber scorecard?
Yeah, it's such a great tool to look at everything that's really happening in our state. But look at school readiness, and you will see that we are nowhere near 100%, or at least the percentage that they want to be on some of the other goals. So I've been raising the alarm flag for a while, especially with the chamber. I think Mark Wilson's great. The children's movement is great.
We are looking at that number here at our local chamber, and we've identified that there are 53 students that are not at third grade reading level. Now, you look at that at a local level. Can we fix that? Can we make a change? There's only 53 students. Business community, your efforts. Go ahead.
The problem is that the kids that are going to be there in 2030, when we have that 100% goal set, those kids are little now. So now is the time to focus on the early learning piece of it, because those are the kids who are going to get us to the goal, right? So it's terrible that only 50% of kids are reading at grade level, but we shouldn't be focused on the third graders.
It's too late.
That's not my lane, right?
Right.
We got to do something for those kids. I'm not certain what it is, but my lane is 0 to 5 is where we need to spend money now to get to 100% by 2030.
Okay, so the biggest challenge is filling the classrooms or getting back to full the service providers. Talking about early learning to where we're getting them as infants to 5 years old before they're in classroom schools, correct? So what are some of the initiatives that have proven effective in your work and what you guys do?
Yeah, so one thing we know is that we have to give children early learning, early literacy experiences. And a big part of that is making sure the kids have books. And so what we've seen, which is really exciting, is that this legislative session, we have a bill that's got a very low number, which I understand is a really good thing. And so this bill gives school districts the authority to send books to the homes of kids who are struggling with literacy. Because what we know is if there's not a book in your house, you're not going to read it. And particularly if you aren't getting books that you're excited about, you're not going to be motivated to read them. But if we send a book in your mailbox with your name on it that says, hey, Nancy, here's a book for you, I'm probably going to pick it up and I'm probably going to open it. And that's going to help with my literacy opportunities.
Okay, so years ago, the state of Florida adopted VPK. And so now you're saying, and that's the responsibility of our school systems, the school districts at the local level, state
and private providers.
And private providers. Okay, so now what you just said was there's a legislative proposed that says the schools can go even earlier in engaging those?
No, this bill addresses K-12. So the districts can mail books to their own students.
To their own students.
Right.
I see.
Which we're very excited about because we've been doing this for 10 years here in Flagler County.
Dolly Parton Imagination
That's
Library.
right. We've been mailing books to kids. We've been mailing books to kids for a long time. And I want to give a hats off to Allison. She's involved in this, and we're also doing it in Volusia County. And we not only are mailing the book to the kiddos, and in the book, which gets mailed to them with their name, it's a very exciting thing when you open that box and here's this book that's been gifted to you by your community. But in the flap inside the book is, here's some questions to ask your child about the book. Here's some ways to extend the learning opportunities that you're going to have just with this little book that I'm putting in your hands. And then we're also emailing parents. Is it monthly, Allison,
yes.
a newsletter? And I know you can talk a lot better about that because you're doing the work.
So back up on Dolly Parton and then go into the email as well. Tell us about the
Dolly Parton. Okay.
Imagination
Yeah.
Library.
So
Give us the state of the library.
yeah. So the Dolly Parton Imagination Library program is a book gifting program. And basically, the community just raises the funds for the program. It's $30 a year per child. So just $30, and a child gets 12 books in the mail annually.
Let me make sure. So this is not government supported. This is not federal funding. It's not state funding. Each community has a champion for Dolly Parton Imagination Library, and that champion builds a team of volunteers, and the mission of those volunteers are to secure funding, that those dollars that they raise pay the Dolly Parton Imagination Library to enroll our community in that program, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so now the organization raises money, it goes to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, and they mail out these books. Who are they mailing the books to, and how do you get the books mailed to your home?
So they mail the books to children from birth until they're 5 years old. The first book they get is The Little Engine That Could. The last book that they get is Kindergarten, Here I Come. They have a selection committee of people that basically know early learning and know what's developmentally appropriate. And those individuals choose the books that children are get for each age.
That's at the Dolly Parton Imagination
Yep, that's
Library
within
level.
that's within their umbrella. So they kind of take the guesswork out of that for us. We don't have to do the selecting or anything. We don't have to ever touch the book. They actually do all the mailing for us, which is really nice. So our committee really is focused on doing the fundraising to be able to provide this for more kids in our community. And to get into the program, you have to be birth to 5, live in the zip codes that the program is available in, and then the parents enroll the child in the program.
So it's needs blind. There's no income requirements, high or low.
Correct.
There's no status. There's no... If you have an infant to 5-year-old in a zip code that's participating because of community donations, your child is entitled to receive that book. So they simply log on to your organization to enroll their child?
Yeah, they can actually go right on the Early Learning Coalition website, and we have a Dolly Parton Imagination Library page, and there's a link right there to enroll, or they can go to the Imagination Library website and do it there as well.
You also said 60 books is the number of books that they get from infant to going into kindergarten. Is that right?
150, 30 a year for 5 years.
Wow.
I mean,
60.
30.
No.
Yeah,
5
60
years
total.
times 12 books, 60
Oh,
total.
I'm sorry, 60 books.
Yeah.
I was right. Thank you.
I'm thinking about
150 is the price.
That's right.
Yeah.
150 is
right.
the money.
Yes.
That's right.
If you would
for
like
the-
to sponsor a child for the life of their
There you
program,
go.
it's 150.
That's where my
Yep.
mind was going.
And so you mentioned the first book and the last book, and what happens in between?
They're all selected age-appropriate books based on the age of that child. So, for example, an infant would receive a board book because it's more sturdy for them. It's easier for them to hold. It's smaller.
chew it.
They can chew it, exactly.
Which is okay for them to do. Parents, if you're listening, please let your babies chew on the books. It's okay.
That's building early literacy skills. Yes. And then there is at least one book every year for each age that's bilingual that comes to the children. And it's a really diverse selection of books. We've really been doing a lot of work with equity, and we've been really examining the books that that are getting mailed out, and they're very diverse. We're really impressed by what we've been seeing. There's definitely been a shift there.
And so the bill, I believe it's House Bill 3. Again, that says that they're going to take that same program of mailing age-appropriate books to school-age children, but the timeline for that is K through 12?
Right, and theirs is not needs blind. So the child has to be identified as somebody who's struggling with literacy, and then they would qualify within the district to have those books received. And districts have latitude in the way they develop these programs and their criteria and things like that. But it's exciting because what we know is that in order to learn to read, you kind of have to have a book to read.
So
You got to be excited about it.
I just love the topic that print is not dying.
That's right.
That's right.
You know, we recently received a survey from Reading is Fundamental. It's an organization that's been around a long time, advocating for literacy. And a lot of their survey respondents were educators who said not only did the children need books, but they needed print books. So, you know, there's lots of access right now, free access to books, you know, that you can download and things like that. But they specifically said, no, kids have to have printed books to hold. So,
Wow.
yeah, print's not dead, no.
No, it certainly isn't.
Well, I think we've seen that too in our increased enrollment in the program. So we've had over 1,000 new kids enroll in the program between the two counties in the last 6 months. So we've definitely seen there is a want out there for this program.
Well, and to make another point, just to put a finer point on it, you know, we talk about the schools, we talk about the providers, but really we don't even have time for the school and the provider to be the first involved. We need the parents and the community involved right away. You see a lot of finger pointing, you know, in all those situations. And I'm like, we should point all the fingers back at us because this should be something that we want in our community for every reason, you know, for strong brains, so we have less social problems, so we have more wonderful things invented and new great things brought to our life by fertilizing these brains at the crucial time. But I think we really can't wait to. I hope he's in a good provider center, you know, or I hope you get in a good child care facility, or I can't wait till you get that good kindergarten teacher. It's a little too late by then.
You know, but families are busy. Lives are hectic, especially today. And to think that the parent, you know, can just go out, pick up a book, and come home and spend time. This program is great. That it's sign up once, and it just keeps coming every month.
And
right?
John, as you and I were dads and grew up, we raised our kids here together, so we've known each other a long time. But the response I get from dads in Flagler County when they find out that I'm connected with the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, their faces just light up. Dads, and when do you get dads that involved? Dads get all the, you know, they get all the flack for not being involved. And the mom, I know my wife is the only reason my kids are so, you know, turned out so well. But to see dads get excited, because that book comes in the mail and it's in that child's name, and that dad comes home from work. Good luck not reading that book, you know.
I also find, I want to back up to something you said earlier, John, that the disposition of your organization, at one point it was under economic development, and today it's under Department of Education.
That's a recent change, really. I mean, it's one of the things we always had to talk about, right, is why were we under the Department of Workforce Initiatives or whatever.
AWI, Agency for Workforce
Right, and if you really think it's because teachers and policemen and people that run our communities need a place for their kids to be while they're out there doing those jobs for us. And it wasn't, it's, as you know, we all raised our kids in those situations. It's not an inexpensive item to your weekly budget, you know, it's a big piece. So the idea that some of those people need subsidies and need help with that is really how this all began in the out of school readiness and how the coalitions were born. I think we've all grown up now, and the things that Nancy and I and Allison and our, the staff knew were important, everybody's learning that now. So it's very encouraging us. Nancy and I were smiling just today because we remember when it was not that way. And now people are starting to get it. If the Florida Chambers, the head of the Florida Chamber is talking early learning like an evangelist right now. I mean, I'm all on board with Mark Wilson, and he takes his directive from David Lawrence. I mean, having the children's movement located here in Florida is just a great resource from us. They use it all over the country and the world. We certainly should use it here in the state of Florida.
So do you see a change coming?
Oh, I have seen a change coming. Like, I've been involved for a really long time. I was a gubernatorial appointee under Charlie Crist when he was governor up in St. John's and Putnam County. But I've always lived here in Flagler. So when I moved my office here, I performed that same role. So I've been around a long time in this area, and I can't tell you all the changes I've seen. I have some great stories of the early days of my first Early Learning Coalition meetings. They're kind of fun to talk about it, but I wouldn't talk about it here. Sure. My first meeting, I looked at the lady who was joining the board across the desk, and I said, "Can we get out of here?" It was really uncomfortable because it was tough. People were fighting. Coalitions were being forced together. So to look at where we are now, I just smile ear to ear because it is so, and you know me, you've known me well, just wind me up and JB will talk about 0 to 5-year-olds and how important it is and how it affects everything in our community. And I always say this too, these guys have heard me say it, we have a lot of causes and a lot of people really do a lot of work for great causes here. But I always try to prioritize our cause, because if you help our cause first, if you really make strong kids in our community, regardless of the parental situation or where they live or anything like that, you're going to help all those other causes. There'll be less obesity. There'll be less, domestic violence. There'll be less teen pregnancy. There'll be less crime. People are afraid of crime. I told the FBI agents, I did a thing for them not too long ago. I can't stop a 15-year-old from robbing your house today, but maybe I can stop a 0-year-old from robbing your house 15 years from now if you just buy into this.
I just fascinated that was in the workforce, went to Department of Education at this point, and now the identification that it is an economic driver. So full circle all the way around again. So it started in economic development, and it's once again there.
Well, you want to be a community that looks good to businesses moving to Florida. We're that kind of place. We want to be the best looking one if you're looking to relocate your corporation, right, John? You know that. We want to increase that commercial tax base. Well, did Coastal Cloud come here because they wanted lousy schools and a bad place? They came here totally for where it is, and you're going to get that if you provide that kind of environment. Especially they want the best for their kids.
Developer friends have shared with me that their two principles are location, and second is school education in the system, the district. The better the school system, the better their development is going to be. Obviously, a great value.
And so talking about the focus that the Chamber is putting on early learning, a program that they've started is called Bosses for Babies, and we happen to have a Boss for Babies sitting with us today. So I'm hoping that maybe you'll tell a little bit about what Bosses for Babies is and how the Chamber's involved in that.
Let's take a quick break, and then John will put you on the spot.
Sounds
Bosses
good.
for Babies.
Awesome.
At The Observer, we work to make sure you receive engaging and relevant content you can't find anywhere else. Our coverage not only delivers news and information focused on where you live, work, and play, but we also aim to surprise and delight with fresh ideas and features. On our new podcast channel, you'll find more of the stories you love. We'll also bring to you exclusive conversations with engaged members of our community that expand on some of those hot topics. We appreciate you stopping by and hope you'll tune in.
Welcome back to Observations. I'm host John Walsh. Today's program is all about early learning, early education. Our guests today are JBirney from JB Financial, Nancy Walsh and Allison Miller, both with the Early Learning Coalition of Flagler and Volusia. Great conversation today. We're going to now talk about another program that's available. It's called Bosses for Babies.
Yeah, it's actually a program from the Children's Movement of Florida, which is probably one of the leading early learning, well, actually probably one of the leading education sources in the entire country, run by David Lawrence down in South Florida. David Lawrence was the head of the Miami Herald and newspapers in Detroit for a year. He's just quite a iconic American in my mind. And Vance Alupis, ironically, who took the job of running the Children's Movement, is now a representative down in South Florida. So he actually is on the committees that are doing some of these bills we just talked about. So that's exciting. But the Children's Movement now has a new executive director. Her name is Madeline Thacker. And they have started a program called Bosses for Babies, where they're getting CEOs from all over the state of Florida. And there's some big ones. The Florida Chamber, Mark Wilson is right on that page, where they're just buying into this is something that we think is really important for the community. There's actually luncheon presentations that they just started doing this year, and I will be their featured guest, I guess, on the March 30th luncheon. So if you check out the Children's Movement website and just look up Bosses for Babies, you'll be able to see that. And I'll be talking about the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, of course, and things like that. Really, a lot of the things that we're doing in Flagler, Volusia that really I think the state is looking at and saying, hey, JB, share some of that stuff. But Bosses for Babies, I think, is something that, again, with this this idea really gaining a lot of attention these days, it's a way to get businesses to buy in. And when businesses buy in, especially big businesses, they can have early learning centers on site. I mean, they can really do things except just saying, I'm a member of Bosses for Babies. They can literally do things and follow some other best examples to really tell their employees and their community that we're invested in your kids. We're invested in the development in this first crucial 5 years of life. So what we want to let you know. So I'm just so happy that they had something like that. That
drill
I can
down
be
a
part
little
of.
bit. Bosses for a Baby. What's the call to action? What?
Well, I think they're really looking for CEOs and business owners who really want to be leaders and want to be setting great examples of being advocates for families, for children, and for policy that supports families. So sometimes there's conversation around, how are they adjusting? And there was a great call recently about COVID. How are businesses adjusting for COVID and giving that flexibility for folks to work from home or use sick time or whatever it is they might need to do to take care of their family while they continue to be productive members of the organization. And I know, John, you mentioned things that you do at the Observer to make sure that people can take care of their families so that they can get the work done. And so that's a piece of something that a Boss for Baby might be a leader in. They might have some great policies in their organization that they want to share with other bosses to say, here's how I did it. Here's how I made my company a family-friendly place. And I advocate for babies and families because I know it's important.
Great. Allison?
I just keep thinking of JB's old saying, we got to carry each other's water. And we can't do this alone. Just, our less than 50 staff at the Early Learning Coalition of Flagler and Volusia, we need the community to support us and help us with this mission because it's too big for us to do alone. And so having more bosses for babies, more CEOs that are dedicated to the cause, that will go out and tell people how important it is, that will join boards, that will join committees, that will just, help with awareness of how important Birth to 5 is. That's really what we need.
I'm having a hard time understanding this program, but it sounds like it's an all call to just support early education.
It's more of an advocacy
So I'm
piece.
a business owner. How would I participate? What would be required of me?
You would go to the Children's Movement website, look under Bosses for Babies, and read what they're trying to do, see the other people I think that you'd be in the group with, and say, hey, this is my kind of thing. There is a monetary amount I think you have to check in too, just to be part of it. But really, I think Allison's got it right. It's the best practices thing. I hear things, I only have a small staff. I've got 3 other employees other than myself. And of course, some of them are family members, so I'm totally bought into them raising their children right. But the truth is, a lot of situations are very different. Bosses have such different things, and there might be a best practice. I heard some talk about, paid family leave, things like that companies are doing that doesn't affect my business particularly, but to hear those ideas is like, aha, I might be helping one of my clients or somebody else with that same thing. And if it's in my wheelhouse of 0 to 5, I want to share that. I want to be that cheerleader. The children's movement, of course, works on issues K through 12. I used to always say K through 12, and Jacob Alivi used to say, JB, we start before kindergarten. You know, I knew that because he would always say, we're earlier than kindergarten. But K through 12 gets so much attention because teachers, the parents are involved. I mean, there's so much, the school board, and we haven't really gotten that in the 0 to 5 community, and we're getting it now. So this is part of a way to again, make that megaphone bigger. CEOs from around the state of Florida that really care about this as a priority, you know, not as a feel-good thing, but of, hey, we need to have a better workforce. We need to save some of these people from whatever might be in front of them that we could prevent.
Let me volunteer my staff once again. We used to participate in a program where my staff members would go to various classrooms throughout the school district and read to the class. Is that sort of what we're talking about as being an advocate, or is it?
It could be. You know, I think what happens is you sign up to apply to be a boss for babies, and then somebody from Children's Movement will contact that person to kind of talk about what's their motivation, what do they bring to the table, and what are the expectations. So it's just kind of raising of your hand and saying, hey, I think I'm interested in being a boss for babies, and then having a conversation with the Children's Movement to identify what are those ways that you can contribute to advancing the cause of taking good care of babies and children and families.
Okay, so Bosses for Babies, children's, what was it called?
The Children's Movement.
The Children's Movement. But all of this is focused on early learning and preparing young children so that they are reading to learn instead of learning to read by the time they get to school. So Bosses for Babies, we talked about Dolly Parton Imagination Library. Allison, how can we participate in Dolly Parton Imagination Library?
So for enrollment or to make a donation to the program, it is just $30 a year to sponsor a child. You can actually go to the Early Learning Coalition website, which is elcfv.org, and you could actually go to communities, and there's a Dolly Parton Imagination Library page, or you could search it in the search engine, and you can actually sign up. There's a link to sign up and a link to donate right on that page.
It reminds me that I didn't do my annual gifting at Valentine's to all of my family members, where Nancy and I would donate on their behalf $30 to enroll a child. So we're going to go back and do that before this week is out. So $30 a year covers a book mailed to one child. $150 covers the entire
lifetime of the child.
0 to 5.
0 to 5, right?
From the lifetime in the program.
The early learning, the early years of the child's life, yeah.
And closing us out.
Hey, John, can I just mention some of our other good partners? Because we've had such good partners. The Dolly Parton Imagination Library is now over 10 years old in Flagler, 11 years old this year. And I think Dignity, Craig Flagler Palms, those guys have been unreal. The United Way Women's Group here have been just fantastic.
Great organization.
Really everybody, and I'm going to leave people out. But
that's the problem with mentioning sponsors.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say we've had so many community champions, and I thank my leadership class too from the old chamber, because a lot of them have stuck it out and stuck with it, and we're still good friends. And it was a homework project out of that chamber class back in 2010. So it's just amazing. I just want to thank everybody.
So monthly cost to deliver all those books here in Flagler, what's the total?
Well, our bill every month in Flagler County alone, I don't know the Volusia one, but Flagler County, our bill is probably about $3,000 to $4,000 a month that we pay.
We estimated at $3,000, and many of our champions here in Flagler commit to doing that. So, for instance, the Women's Initiative sponsors a month. Craig Flagler Palms sponsors
multiple months.
Yeah, they've got a great program.
We have the Flagler Beach Rotary Club that kind of helps us with kids that are there. So we do have great partners here in Flagler. Many of our partners are actually the ones writing the checks, but I want to give a shout out to Volusia because they have great champions who not only write checks but do fundraisers too, and they are just going gangbusters down there.
Yeah, so the Volusia program costs is up to about $7,000 a month right now, and we do have some of those great ongoing partnerships, like the Women United Volusia Group also contributes to the program. We've got the Daytona Racing District has given us a significant contribution. Seabreeze Kiwanis Club donates annually. So we have a lot of those ongoing continuous sponsors that really help sustain the program. And then the committee in Volusia does a fundraising event. They've actually started a virtual 5K during COVID. middle of COVID and like, let's just do this. We gotta keep the program going. And they're going to actually have a live real 5K in October. So look out for that. It's called the Little Literacy Heroes 5K. You get a cape and
I remember the cape.
It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be at One Daytona and it's going to be literacy themed. It's going to be a really good time. So, look out for that. And if you want to help fundraise, we are open to having new people on the committees for both counties. So we are definitely looking for volunteers. Maybe you don't have a lot of money to give, but you have time to give and you can help raise money, bring it on. We love it.
A. Miller at elcfv.org, and I'm N. Walsh at elcfv.org. Those are easy ones to remember. So, or if you know JB, which everybody in Flagler does.
Email those guys.
JB, all good.
Call John Walsh at the Observer. He'll get you in contact with us.
He'll get you in contact with everybody.
We'd love to have you on as a champion.
I may not be an
Always
expert, but I'm pretty versed at the subject. Absolutely.
And you know people.
And I know people. I know some. Okay. Thanks a lot for joining us today. You guys are doing great work. We want smart children so that we have great communities. So good luck in your efforts going forward.
Thanks so
much.
much.
Thanks for the
Thank
opportunity.
you.
Thank you.